that increases that which is not his. Woe unto you that increases that which is not his. So to understand what American debt is, without further ado, let's hit the video. Now listen carefully to Michael Hudson break down what American debt is.
So we do have some time now for questions from the audience. I wonder if we should just take a few, and then we can respond to them all together. So, okay.
Thank you. I have a question. What's the difference between the U.S. debt and the debt that African nations own? Because the U.S. debt doesn't keep the U.S. from being one of the leading powers of the world, but then African nations can't make it because of that debt that is strangling them.
Shall I talk? Okay. The first question is a very important question. What makes African and third world debt different from the American debt? Number one, America's never going to pay its debts.
You hear that? America's never going to pay its debt. The question was, what's the difference between the debt that you get in these third world countries when they pile up debt and America's debt? All right? And just like he said, number one, America is never going to pay its debt. This is how we know everything's going to go digital, because they're never going to pay their debt. Listen carefully to Michael Hudson.
It doesn't have to. Its debts are in its own currency. We can simply print it. The African debt is not in its currency.
You hear that? American debt is in its own currency. Right? That's what they do. So it simply just prints its debt. That's what the European Union does with the euro. It simply just prints its debt. Right? This is what these two major currencies do. They just print money to create their debt. Listen to Michael Hudson.
The African debt is in US dollars. Africa has to earn the US dollars, and the only way it can earn the US dollars is not to be assassinated for growing its own food and becoming independent and doing something that the United States does not like.
So these third world countries, their debt is in US dollars. This is how we know the whole system is going to crash. So they have to earn US dollars to be able to loan it out, or they have to loan the US dollars as for them to purchase stuff. That's why the American dollar is the world reserve currency. Listen carefully.
The principle underlying the foundation of the World Bank, the International Bank for IBRD, research, the World Bank, is that no country should grow its own food. Africa and the third world should only grow export crops. To export, in order to have an oversupply of cocoa and other tropical raw materials, to keep down the price, they must buy their grain from the United States or Europe, so that if they do something that we don't like, we can do what America tried to do to China in the 60s. We can sanction them. We can say, we're going to starve you. We're going to not export any grain to you. So owing their foreign debt in dollars means that they have to somehow sell something that the United States wants, not what they want. I think
they have to pay that debt off in dollars. That's why they have to earn dollars to pay off their debt. Whereas America prints dollars to pay off its debt, which is a Ponzi scheme.
Most evil organizations in the world today are the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund.
Have we not been telling you that? That's the Rothschild's havens, the Royal Bank, the World Bank, sorry, and the International Monetary Fund. Have we not been telling you that? These bankers, these Illuminatis, whatever you want to call them, these financiers that control the money system, these people are the wicked that the Bible speaks of, because these are controlled by these Edomites, Esau. They control it. The Europeans control it. The Americans control it. He's telling you, it's the most wickedest organization ever. All right? That's what he said, right?
Wants, not what they want. I think the most evil organizations in the world today are the World Bank and the International Monetary Fund. And my book, Super Imperialism, that I wrote in 1972, is all about that. The largest purchasers of the book were the Defense Department and the CIA. I was immediately, the organization I worked for was given a $75,000, $85,000 Defense Department contract for me to come to explain to them how American imperialism worked, and they used it as a how to do it book. They thought it was just it was just spontaneous, and I had written the book thinking that socialists and third world countries would do something about it, and indeed it was translated into Spanish and other languages. But it was really the Defense Department that applied most of this, and I was amazed when I was invited to the White House to explain how imperialism worked. And my boss said, "We've run rings around the British imperialists. This is how to do it. You make them owe the debts in your currency, not their own. You
make them owe the debt in your currency, not their own." That's American imperialism. That's how these bankers have got their hands around the necks of what they consider these third world countries. You make these countries owe their debt in your currency. So the main central banks in the world is the European Central Bank and the Federal Reserve. Those are the two main. And then you've got the Bank of England is the third one. So they have to earn your currency to pay off their debt. That's how they've got a stranglehold on the whole financial system. It's an evil. So scripture says, "Woe unto them that is it Isaiah 10? It says, "Woe unto them." Let's quickly read it out, boy. I'm going to finish playing the rest of this. "That decrees unrighteous decrees. Woe unto them." Let me quickly read it out. We're going to play the rest of this. Isaiah chapter 10. Verse 1, "Woe unto them that decree unrighteous decrees, and that write grievousness which they have prescribed, to turn aside the needy from judgment, and to take away the right from the poor of my people, that widows may be their prey, and that they may rob the fatherless." Woe unto them, all right? That decree unrighteous decree. That's exactly what it is. Salawam, Amawadabad, beloved brother. It's economic warfare. All right, exactly what it says there. It's an economic strategy. Let me just put it up here. It's an economic strategy, economic warfare or economic wars, economic strategy utilized by belligerent nations with the goal of weakening the economy of other states. This is primarily achieved by the use of economic blockades. Ravaging the crops of the enemy is a classic method used for thousands of years. Absolutely. And this is what America does with its US dollar. This is how its currency is the world reserve currency. That's what its military is there for. But like I said, we all know this is coming to an end. This is all coming to an end. And we know that. So let's go on.
You control their central bank and make them financially dependent on you, and then you've got a stranglehold.
Yeah, you control their central bank. This is what the Rothschilds have done by taking control of all the central banks around the world and make their. Let me just read them again. Listen to what he says again. Listen carefully what he says again.
Their central bank and make them your currency, not the run rings around the British imperialists. This is how to do it. You make them owe the debts in your currency, not their own. You make
them owe the debt in your currency and not their own. That's the key to keeping these countries forever poor, forever being considered a third world country.
You control their central bank and make them financially dependent on you. And
you control their central banks and make them financially dependent on you. What have we been telling you what the Rothschilds' plans have always been? These bankers' finance is to own and control every central bank around the world. You control their central bank and make them dependent on you. Listen carefully.
then you've got a stranglehold for them. So certainly,
Yeah, he said it. He said you got a stranglehold for them. What did I say? This is what they've literally done. They've got their hands around the necks of all of these countries by controlling their central banks and making them borrow money in your currency and owing it in your currency, which means they got to pay it back in your currency. That's what America does. Where America's debt, they just keep printing it because it's in dollars. When they need more, they just print more. But this is how we know the whole system's going to collapse, the whole Ponzi scheme.
third world countries should cancel the debts under the odious debt principle. I haven't been able to convince any of them to do it because they said if we do that, the CIA will kill us. So how do you break that cycle? That's a problem I've not been able to solve.
The other thing, when you were responding to the first question, there's also something we're suffering from in Africa, the devaluation of currency as another way of
Devaluation of
the currency.
currency, yes.
As a way of keeping us dependent.
Of course, that's what they do. The devaluation of your currency is keeping you dependent on these devils.
Continuously.
That's a good point. When a country devalues a currency, what are they devaluing? Well, you know, there's a world price for grain, a world price for aluminum, a world price for raw materials. The only thing that they can really devalue is the price of their labor. So when Africa or Latin America or Greece is told to, or America is told to devalue the currency, what that means is pay labor less. You have to squeeze out more to pay the top of the economic pyramid, to suck it all up to the top 10% or 1% or 0.1%. So devaluation is basically an anti-labor policy to prevent a domestic market and prosperity from developing. That is why China and Russia are saying, we don't want to be part of the dollar area. We want
Why China and Russia are saying we don't want to be part of the dollar era. Remember, China and Russia don't trade in the dollar no more when they trade with each other. So he said it's all about keeping cheap labor, devaluing the currency because it's worth less. This is where inflation comes in. I keep telling you, inflation is not to do with when people say, oh, the price has gone up of something in the shop. It was £1 today or $1 today, and tomorrow it's $1.50 or £1.50 tomorrow. It's not about it going up. It's about the devaluation of your currency. Your currency loses its value. So you just got to use more of it to buy the same shit you bought the day before. That's the devaluation of currency. Do you understand? That's why China and Russia don't want no part of the dollar era. Listen carefully.
That is why China and Russia are saying, we don't want to be part of the dollar area. We want our own currency, and we'll only borrow in our own debt. Last time I went to China, it was a little annoying because they insisted in paying me in yuan, which all these little red bills that you have to go to a bank to turn in, and yet they said, well, we're following your advice. What do you complain about? So what could I do? It's a good idea, but at least they don't want any part of American sanctions.
They don't want any part of it. So he's absolutely right. He's absolutely right. So this is what they do. The devaluation of your currency. And this is why China and Russia don't want nothing to do with this US dollar, basically. As simple as that. So he's just breaking it down to this is how America is able to continue sustaining its debt. Right? Because all they're doing, they're never paying off their debt. Just like you said, America will never be able to pay off their debt. Why? Because all they're ever paying off is interest. If you're paying off interest only, you're never going to be able to pay off the principal. So the principal always keeps on going up because all you do is pay off interest. And that's all they do. So how do they do that? They just keep printing more money to pay off the money that they already owe. It's the greatest Ponzi scheme ever. Yeah, it's like one brother Amawada Bud said he covered this topic during camp last Sunday. That's the spirit, brother. That's the spirit. The small hats admitted to the wicked policy in their book entitled The Hidden Tyranny. Absolutely. It's a tyranny. It is a tyranny that they've got. And this is what they use in the stranglehold. The Rothschild say he doesn't care. He made a statement, right? What's his name? Maya Amschel Rothschild. He said he doesn't care who controls or rules the country, as long as I control the currency. Simple as that. You know? Let's grab these precepts here. I've got a few here. I've got a couple here that I'm thinking of right now. Let's grab a few of these. We're just going to work in the spirit today. So it's beautiful you put up these precepts. I'm with the bud. Proverbs chapter 23, verse 3. Be not desirous of his dainties, for they are deceitful meat. Labor not to be rich. Cease from thine own wisdom. Wilt thou set thy eyes upon that which is not? Because it's not worth anything. These dollar bills are not worth shit. And soon the whole world is going to find out. For riches certainly make themselves wings. They fly away as an eagle towards heaven. Eat thou not the bread of him that has an evil eye. You understand? No, we don't want what they want. What we want is the kingdom. And with the kingdom's going to come real money, gold and silver and diamonds and every resource that's considered real money. It says, neither desire his dainty meats. And that's what his US dollar is, his dainty meats. For as he thinketh in his heart, so is he. Eat and drink, says he to thee, but his heart is not with thee. The morsel which thou hast eaten shalt thou vomit up, and lose thy sweet words. Yeah, that's exactly what he said. Yeah, that's what Nathan Mayer Rothschild says. Give me control of a nation's money supply, and I care not who makes its laws. And that's exactly what it is. They control the money supply, just like Michael Hudson said. The IMF and the World Bank are the two most evil, he actually used the word evil, organizations in the world. Those are the real mafias, the IMF and the World Bank. That's the real mafia. They're killing millions, starving millions, and they're robbing millions. They want you to believe that the cartels, the drug cartels, the Cosa Nostra are the real mafia. These devils are the real mafias. And that's the first thing he said. He said the IMF and the World Bank are two evil organizations. But yeah, that's what the Rothschild says. Give me control of a nation's money supply, and I care not who makes its laws. Care not who makes its laws. So I was looking at this today, the national debt explained, right? The national debt is the amount of money the federal government has borrowed to cover the outstanding balance of expenses incurred over time. In a given fiscal year, when spending money for roads and, exceeds revenue, money from the federal income tax, a budget deficit results. To pay for this deficit, which is what America's been living under a deficit since the War of Independence. To pay for its deficit, the federal government borrows money by selling marketable securities, telling you that, we're going to sell you a security for us to get this money. But that money that they're getting is just printed money because the Federal Reserve gives it to them. They call it fractional banking or fractional reserves, where they only have a certain amount of money in the bank and then they print the rest. It's just a matter of trend. They don't even need to print it no more. They just go into a computer and they just add zeros to an account. It's all electronic digital. It says the federal government borrows money by selling marketable securities such as treasury bonds and bills and notes and floating rate notes and treasury inflation protected securities. The national debt is the accumulation of this borrowing along with associated interest owed to the investors who purchased these securities. As the federal government experiences reoccurring deficits, which is common, the national debt grows. That's all it does, it grows. Simply put, the national debt is similar to a person using a credit card for purchases and not paying off the full balance each month. The cost of the purchases exceeding the amount paid off represents a deficit, while accumulated deficits over time represents a person's overall debt. So this is basically a simple example. If its revenue is $400 in year one, its spending is $500, its deficit is $100. Year two, The revenue is 600. The spending is 800. The deficit is 200, which in total makes it 300. That's how America, the federal government, is working. Its total debt at the moment, it says, hey, look, it says the US has carried debt since its inception. Debts incurred during the American Revolutionary War amounted to over $75 million by the 1st of January, 1791. Over the next 45 years, the debt continued to grow until 1835, when it notably shrank through the sale of federally owned lands and cuts to the federal budget. Shortly thereafter, an economic depression caused the debt to again grow into the millions. The debt grew over 4,000% through the course of the Civil War, increasing from $65 million in 1860 to $1 billion in 1863, and around $2.7 billion shortly after the conclusion of the war in 1865. The debt grew steadily into the 20th century and was roughly $22 billion after the country financed its involvement in World War I. So it says here, notably recent events triggering large spikes in the debt include the Afghanistan and Iraq wars, the 2008 Great Recession, C-19, and from the year 2019 to the year 2021, spending increased by 50%, largely due to C-19 pandemic, right? Tax cuts, stimulus programs, increased government spending, and decreased tax revenue caused by widespread unemployment generally account for the sharp rise in national debt. So, the national debt, you see, in 1921, it was $373 billion, all right? That's what it was, 373. 1944, 3.1 trillion. Can you see it kind of steadily moved down and up across the years? 1981, it's 3.2 trillion. 1982, 3.2 trillion. Then 20 years later, 15 years later, 1996, it's gone up to 9.1 trillion. So it's tripled from 1980 to 1996, 16 years, it tripled to 9.1 trillion. Then 10 years, 12 years later, it went up to 12.6 trillion, 2008. Now, 2021, 2022, 28.4 trillion. And I believe, because we're in 2022, I believe it's about 30 trillion now, 30 point something trillion now, all right? Just to show you. So, let me just grab a few scriptures here. Is it Habakkuk? Hold on. Habakkuk 2. That's what it says here. Habakkuk 2 verse 6. Shall not all these take up a parable against him and a taunting proverb against him and say, woe to him that increases that which is not his? That's what he's done. That's what America's done. And its military is what it uses to continue forcing this US dollar that is going to collapse on all of these nations to trade with it. So what you see going on with Russia right now is a massive issue. This war in Ukraine is a massive, massive issue towards the US dollar. So when it says how long can this last? Truly, how long can this Ponzi scheme last? How long can you keep on printing money, borrowing that printed money and using that same printed money to pay off your debt? But you're not paying off the principal, you're only paying off the interest on the borrowed money that you borrowed from the Federal Reserve, that the Federal Reserve just printed and gave you. How long can this Ponzi scheme last? This is why I say this war in Ukraine, Russia, China is a massive threat to what's going on with the US dollar as well. It's a massive threat to the US dollar, and they know this. So the question truly is how long? And to him that lathers himself with thick clay. As we know, the word thick clay there, if we go to Habakkuk 2 and 6, abattoir. Let's get it up there. Hold on. Thick clay. It's kind of, they say, I know they pronounce it kind of aptite or aptite. When you actually break down the word,
Strong's H 5671. Aptite. Aptite.
that's how they pronounce it there. Aptite. Aptite. And this is the Hebrew word for it here, for thick clay, all right? So if we go down here, weight of pledges, heavy debts. Weight of pledges, heavy debt. So that's what the word thick clay means. It doesn't mean thick clay itself, actual clay. It means weight of pledges, heavy debt. So how long can America continue with this weight of pledges that it gives with its securities that it's loaning and heavy debts? Because remember, this is all it's doing, right? It's a weight of pledge. If we say, where is it? The national debt is composed of distinct types of debt, similar to an individual whose debt consists of a mortgage, car loan, or credit cards. The national debt can be broken down into non-marketable and marketable, and whether it's a debt held by the public or held by the government itself, known as the intra-governmental. The national debt does not include debts carried by state and local governments, such as debt used to pay state-funded programs, nor does it include debt carried by individuals, such as personal credit card or debt. I mean, that's even so much more. So it says here, the visual below comparing the calendar year 2012-2022 displays the difference in growth between the debt held by the public and the intra-government debt. So the debt held by the public, 24.3 trillion of that federal debt, and the intra-government debt is 6.7 trillion. So in total, like I said, it's that's nearly $31 trillion, the total debt that this federal government owes. And this is what they do to maintain the debt. The federal government is charged interest for the use of lenders' money in the same way that lenders charge an individual interest for a car loan or mortgage. How much the government pays in interest depends on the total national debt and the various security interest rates, right? As of August 2022, which is 3 months ago, we're in September. No, 1 month. We're in September. It's 1 month ago. August is last month, right? As of August 2022, it costs $677 billion to maintain the debt, which is 12.66% of the total federal spending. The national debt has increased every year over the past 10 years. Interest expenses during the period have remained fairly stable due to low interest rates and investors' judgment that the US government has a very low risk of default. So this is what they want you to believe, that the US government has a what? They say it's due to the US government having a very low risk of default. They don't believe they're going to default on this debt. However, recent increases in interest rates and inflation are now resulting in an increase in interest expense. So this is what they're borrowing every month to keep alive. 677 since August, 677.6 billion to maintain the debt. That's since as of August 2022. So when it says weight of pledges, heavy debts, this is what it is. It's a weight of pledge that they're not going to be able to pay on these pledges. The heavy debts is like we saw there. This is what they borrowed so far this year to keep alive, $677.6 billion, just to keep this Ponzi scheme going. And that's just over the last, up until August 2022. And the fiscal year begins, I believe, in April. So that's what they borrowed roughly since April to keep the debt alive, to keep on, be able to fund the debt. So let's go back. So when it says Woe to him that increases that which is not his. How long? To him that ladders himself with thick clay. So that's what America's done. It's completely ladders himself with thick clay. And it does this all through pushing the dollar, the US dollar, that it believes, that it's making the public believe it's not going to collapse. And it's going to collapse. And as I said, this is why everything is going to go digital, because they know this is going to collapse. So it says, shall not they rise up suddenly that shall bite thee, and awake that shall vex thee, and thou shalt be for booties unto them, because thou hast spoiled many nations, all the remnant of the people shall spoil thee, because of men's blood, and for the violence of the land of the city, and all that dwell therein. So there's a precept I want to go to. Is it Sirach? They're going to spoil. America is going to be spoiled by the same people that have entrusted them. Sirach chapter 10, I believe. That's entrusted them to that US dollar, because it's going to collapse. Here it goes. Because of unrighteous dealings, injuries, and riches got by deceit. That's how they became the richest country in the world, by deceit. They've been allowed to tally up a debt like that, all by deceit. And riches got by deceit. The kingdom, as we know, this is why I say all of this, what's going on in Russia, these are all the beginnings of the kingdom, of Esau's kingdom, is going to be translated from one people to another. Because all of their riches that they got is by deceit. The kingdom, when we say that Esau is the end of the world and Jacob is the beginning of it that follows, well, this is what's being prepared to happen. But like I said, there are certain things that are going to take place before that collapse comes. All right? So it says the kingdom is translated from one to another. And that's what we're getting ready to happen. Now, the scripture I'm thinking of here, Isaiah 14. It's a particular verse I want to go to. This place is getting ready to fall, mate. It says there, how art thou fallen from heaven, O Lucifer, son of the morning? How art thou cut down to the ground, which didst weaken the nations? And that's what you see happening. This US dollar is weakening these other nations. This is why the man Michael Hudson said the IMF, the World Bank, the US dollar, these are the wickedest things on planet Earth. Because that's what's weakening the nations. This US dollar is keeping America head above water, but all of these other nations are sinking because of this dollar. But it is going to collapse. It's 100% going to collapse. So there was another little article I wanted to read here before I shut this down here. I was looking at, see here? Because this is where it's all heading to, the dreams of a cashless society. Now this was a study of the EFTPOS, I think it's electronic something financial transaction, which they did in New Zealand, right? What does it stand for again? It stands for, it should be here. It's the electronic, there it is. It's the electronic funds transfer at the point of sale. This is the system that they use to transfer money, right? 1 second, Lucky. Oh, Salaki family. So this is what it is. It's an electronic funds transfer at the point of sale. They call it the FT-POS system, right? So this was a study done in New Zealand regarding going to a cashless society, right? As you can see here. The Dreams of a Cashless Society, a study of the FTOS, the EFT-POS in New Zealand, right? This was a study done, right? Of them going to this cashless society. Because like I said, all of this fiat money system is going to collapse. The US dollar is going to be the main one to collapse, and then all of the rest of these currencies are going to collapse with it. And this is what's going to make everything, every currency in the world go digital, because there are going to be certain currencies that literally the majority of the world is going to be using, like the euro, the digital dollar, the digital euro, digital pound, digital ruble, digital yuan. All of the major currencies are going to cause all of the rest of the world to use those digital currencies. It's all going to go digital. So this was a study done, a paper that looks at the way in which this paper looks at the way in which a utopian dreams such as the cashless society influences the adoption of information technology. Some authors claim the utopian visions are used by IT firms to market their services and products, and that the hype that often accompanies technological innovations is part of a large-scale social process, which it is in contemporary societies. This article discusses the social role of technological utopianism with respect to the introduction of an EFT-POS in New Zealand. The case of New Zealand is interesting, given that New Zealand has the highest saturation of EFT-POS terminals in the world. All right. So, hold on. Okay. So go down to a certain page here. Just want to show you something. Page 2. Okay. So it says there, the cashless society. In this section, we will discuss just one utopian ideal, that of the cashless society. Some forecasters view the prospect of a cashless society with delight, looking on it as increasing the efficiency of the economy. Utopians tend to think that the advent of a cashless society will bring universal change for better. That's what they're going to tell you, all right? When this dollar collapses and all these other fiat currencies collapse, for everything to go digital. It says here, for example, it says Gleek, 1977, says cash is heavy, expensive to make and move, count and guard, right? This is what this man Gleek is saying, one of the researchers. He said, cash is also quaint. Technologically speaking, the notes in your pocket are as outmoded as Morse code. He says, cash is dying, right? So it says, he describes digital money. We're here, right? He describes digital money as perfect money, which weighs nothing, travels at the speed of light, and doesn't get scuffed, worn, or dirty, right? Washman, in his 1990 report, claims that criminals would be easier to track down, legal judgment easier to enforce, illegal aliens simpler to spot, and debtors unable to avoid their responsibilities. This is everything they're saying now, right? And remember, this report was put together in 1999, all right? Over 20 years ago, all right? Over nearly 25 years ago, this report was put together. So he suggests that the cashless society would have a crippling effect on the world drug trade. And we've always said this, they're gonna say all of these things. It's gonna be able to control illegal, what they call illegal aliens, gonna be simple to spot, they're gonna say. Debtors are gonna be unable to avoid their responsibility. Legal judgments are gonna be easier to enforce. Criminals are gonna be easier to track down. It's gonna cripple the world drug trade. We've said all these things they're gonna tell you when they push this full on. Now remember, this report was written nearly 25 years ago, all right? It says, so now we're here, right? It says, of course, there are those who view the advent of the cashless society with foreboding. They see it as yet another way in which the details of our lives become subject to scrutiny. Baxter of 1996, in 1996, this man called Baxter is one of the authors of this report, for example, sees the cashless society as leading to a one world government, which we've always told you, right? This is what it's all about. One world government, new world order, right? Listen carefully. Where every person will have a unique number. This is what we tell you, right? And what do we call it? Let's listen to what he says. Quoting the book of Revelations in the Bible, Baxter says that without this unique number, the mark of the beast. So we know where this unique number is going to be, right? The mark of the beast is the microchip. What is he telling you? The cashless society is going to represent and symbolize the mark of the beast. This is what he's telling you. He says, without this unique number, because 666 is going to be on every serial code, on every barcode, the mark of the beast, nobody, listen, will be able to buy or sell. So, this man here, Baxter, this was his view on the cashless society when they was putting together this report, right? This document based on what it would be like to have a cashless society in the future, right? Because they're planning, like I said, they've been planning this for over decades. So he's telling you, he's wrote in the report. Can you imagine if someone tried to write this in the report today? They would try and say he's a conspiracy theorist. He wrote in the report in 1966, he said, Baxter. Let me just put this again here, just so you can see where we're at. Baxter, in 1996, this is what he added. He said, for example, sees the cashless society as leading to a one world government, everything we've been telling you, where every person will have a unique number. We've been telling you that. Quoting the book of Revelations in the Bible, what we have been telling you, quoting, Baxter says that without this unique number, which is going to be on your microchip, which he called the mark of the beast, nobody will be able to buy or sell. You think these people, and remember, this was a document that was put together to see, this is what it was called, right? The cashless society. In this section, we will discuss just one utopian ideal, that of a cashless society. Some forecasters view the prospect of a cashless society with delight, looking at it in an increasing efficiency of the economy. Utopians tend to think that the advent of a cashless society will bring universal change for better. All right? So this was a research that they did, these philosophers and these economists and these technological utopianism, these people that worked in the technology world. The report is called The Dreams of a Cashless Society, a study of the electronic EFT-POS in New Zealand. This is a Journal of International Information Management. This is what they did, right? It was a report they put together, all right, with the University of Auckland. Just like it says there, the paper looks at the way in which utopian dreams such as cash society influence the adoption of information technology. Some authors claim the utopian visions are used by IT firms to market their services and products, and that the hype that often accompanies technological innovations is part of a large-scale social process in contemporary societies. The article discusses the social role of technological utopianism with respect to the introduction of an EFT-POS in New Zealand. All right? So, and this report, like I said, goes back to, was it 1999 they put it together? Yeah, 1999, I think the document says, 1999, just so you understand. And these are the people that played a part in putting this report together back in 1999, all right? Just so you understand. These things, so the EFT-POS is an electronic funds transfer at the point of sale. That's what EFT-POS stands for, electronic funds transfer at point of sale. So I say again, one of the guys that put the report together, this was his outcome was, he reckons, and he wrote about it in 1996, before he was asked to add his 2 cents to this cashless society, that it was going to lead to a one world government where every person will have a unique number. The 666 is going to be on the serial code, right? Quoting the book of Revelations in the Bible, Baxter says that without this unique number, the mark of the beast, nobody will be able to buy or sell. What does the Bible say? Before we shut this down, and they still don't believe this is what they're planning. And this is why I said this dollar will collapse. This American debt is going to play a major part in the collapse of the US dollar because they're never going to be able to pay off that debt. Just like what Michael Hudson said. The American government, the federal government will never be able to pay off that debt. So they're going to have to collapse the current fiat money systems. The US dollar is the world reserve currency. Once that collapses, all the other currencies around the world will collapse. And then it's going to force them to bring in these digital currencies that will probably be backed by gold or silver. So when the Bible says he causes all, both small and great, rich and poor, free and bond, to receive a mark, which is the charagma, the microchip, in their right hand or in their foreheads, that no man might buy or sell, say he that has the mark or the name of the beast or the number of his name. They've been planning this shit for decades. That report was written 25 years ago in 1999. Sorry, in 1999, that report was written. They've been planning this for decades. So for those of you that still don't believe, that's where it's going. That's where it's going. So I'm going to close it on that note there. As always, I want to give all the praises and the glory to Yahweh, Bahasham, Yahweh Shai, Bahasham, Rakah Kodash. Double honors to the apostles of Great Millstone, who are leading this word in truth and spirit and sincerity, and salutations to my fellow Hebrew Israelite brothers out there that are plowing the fields in the name of Yahweh Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai. And salutations to the brothers and sisters that have been edified by the truth of the scriptures of who we are, the true children of Israel, and who the other nations are. If you didn't see the video at the beginning of this edification, I implore you to go back to the beginning of this edification and listen to what Michael Hudson says about the American debt and the US dollar. We're nearly there. Shalom, 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 family. All praises.